Let's take it to Gautam Chhaochharia, who's with us. He's head of global markets at UBS. Gautam, good to have you with us here. Thanks very much for your time. You guys were one of the first to put out a note sort of encapsulating your views on what's happened with the elections. But some time has passed. I'm sure you've spoken with clients at your end as well. So I just want to start by you giving us some feedback in terms of what you're picking up from investors, foreign investors, and how they're seeing the results come in, and what does this mean for what they will do from here? Go on.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Look, the investors clearly for this election outcome was a negative surprise, given how the exit polls came in, given where the market valuations were. But again, depends on the specific set of investors. There were foreign investors who had also lightened up a bit. But again, look, the broader foreign investor base is still overweight India, though the relative overweight is one of the lowest we have seen in many, many years. The feedback from investors overnight and coming through the morning is, look, now they're looking at a few milestones before really making up their minds. You will see some trades here and there, but the big thing on their mind is Modi forming the government with allies. Second is who gets the relevant ministries. And third, ultimately, what they're focused is on reforms and growth, whether there's enough policy momentum. And there is some view out there amongst investors that some of the tougher reforms might take a backseat or take time. But beyond that, some of the more obvious ones would the government push that if they form the government.
Gautam, hi, good morning. I guess you guys have been cautious in this market for a while, right? And maybe yesterday's event only cemented that view that you've had. The point, however, is that now the market's finally given that dip, that big opportunity where stock prices aren't running away on a tear. Would that perhaps make foreign investors rethink their moves, their entries, and maybe in terms of just portfolio allocation, look at India again?
So again, question of time frame. Look, our cautious view was on a relative to emerging markets, what the valuations are implying, and obviously from a next 6 to 6 month perspective. Most investors we speak to, even overnight, remain optimistic on growth potential for India. They're looking for signals, policy signals, to get reassured that the underlying growth cycle will continue. So again, look, will investors come back in a big way or not? That depends on the policy announcements we see over the next month or so. But there is enough appetite, intent, and I would say cash line, both foreigners and locals, to deploy if they see the right signals.
Okay, all right. Hi, Gautam. Good morning and good to see you in. This is Nigel on this side. The problem and what the market is fearing is this government has been a reform or policy-oriented government, and some of those policies will not push through. Were you all penciling in something either on the land reforms or something on those lines that could have seen the light of day in the coming tenure, which now may get delayed?
So look, we've had 10 years of a strong majority government, and both land reforms and agri reforms were attempted even before and faced political resistance. So that was not a base case that will get pushed through. That will be more like an upside scenario that if the government had come in with a big majority, then there's a possibility they could have tried it again. But as you've seen, many of the reforms are also being pushed out at the state level, including land at some states. Labor reforms is being talked about because the parliament has already passed it. Now it's more about operationalizing it. But there are a lot of other stuff which doesn't necessarily require political capital, if you may use the term. Push to manufacturing, push to infrastructure, and to balance possible need to do more spend for the poor or agri sector. Those things, how much political capital is required is worth debating, because we have seen reforms, including tough reforms, in periods where we've had a coalition government or government with very weak single party in the core of it. So I won't be that pessimistic that we won't see many reforms which the market would have been expecting it. But yeah, some of the couple of tougher reforms which require a lot more political capital, that we have to wait and watch as to how it gets done.
By the way, I just want to point out the market has already taken a turn for the worse, and now we've got a red screen again. Nifty is down about 30 points. So the opening gains have been lost quite quickly. There's a lot of selling on the Adani Group stocks. Now, and of course, not just the bigger ones, which opened about 7-8% lower, but now, as in the smaller ones, but even the bigger ones. Adani Ports, for instance, is losing ground. Adani Enterprises is down 4%. Adani Power, etc., are anyway down around 9 to 10%. So that's one lot. There's tremendous selling on something like an L&T, and this is a portfolio shift that one sort of speaks of. Whether, now portfolios will take a call of unloading a little bit from, a capex-facing, infra-facing name like L&T and move that money to something like Lever. Gautam, actually, let me ask you that. I mean, are you expecting... So let's sort of look beyond the bumper bazooka reforms that you mentioned were not your base case. But in terms of just the policy shift and the policy stance, are you really expecting a change away from capex, away from Atmanirbhar, Make in India, defense and manufacturing, to more populist, to more rural? Because right now the market seems to be trying to work with that scenario and price that in. So therefore sell an L&T and buy a Lever. But will it be as simplistic?
Unlikely, because look, let's put things in context. When you talk about shift in spending, is it a tweak or is it a massive change in spending pattern? Because the scale of spending required to, say, support poor or rural sector, unless we see extreme shift in spending stance, the scale of spending will not matter so much to change the capex part. Now, coming on the capex part, if you look at what the government has been doing over the last 2-3 years, a huge jump up in public capex. But the hope and ultimate idea was that this translates to attract private capex spending to start. And that's what many of the stocks also started pricing in, that private capex cycle possibly will happen in pockets, not necessarily in a broad way, but that's what should happen. Now, the important point to make here, and goes back to the policy statement, policy continuity, beyond markets, for the capex cycle names, and even for economic cycle, the corporate sentiment is also very, very relevant, because most of the corporates we had spoken to before elections, the reason they were not jumping into a big corporate capex spend cycle is also they wanted the elections to get over and get policy stability and clarity. Now, the policy announcement which we see beyond market will also affect the corporate sentiment and therefore the corporate capex cycle. That's something which we need to watch.
Gautam, for those who are watching you, give us three published, I mean, nothing sort of which is not published, three bets which one can confidently buy. I mean, actually, when you buy everything confidently, and then you kind of hope it works out. But what you can do now to kind of, and then I'm not talking about what you need to make money in a week, but something you can buy and hold on to, because if amidst all of that is what is happening. Go on.
Look, again, depends on the time frame of investors, right? The near-term trade will be away from the more expensive industrial cyclicals to, say, consumers or rural exposed. That's the near-term trade. But the longer-term economic cycle will still be supportive of the, what we'll say, utilities and industrials. That's the long-term thing. Again, you have to be very careful right now about the starting valuations, because the bull market we've seen in the last few months has meant there has been very extreme valuation. So one of the things we have been sharing with our investors is look at valuation in the context of history, which percentile they are in. Look at where the earnings expectations are versus history and what's the delta there. And then try and pick and choose the right stock. So I can't talk about single stocks, unfortunately, on this forum, but that's the framework we are recommending our investors to look at.
All right. I just want to make a quick point. The market is just sort of, really all over the place. It's 5 minutes of market action this morning. The gap up made a high at 22,100. The low today, immediately after that, it was 21,791. And we are now back at about 22,500, right? So this is a serious amount of swing. I mean, if you just add up the, the open, then the sell-off, and then the rally, I mean, I think we've already swung some 600, 700 points, maybe more in the first 5 minutes of trade. So that's essentially what's going on. It's up 150 odd points at this point.
The screen is telling you what investors are thinking. They believe there's going to be that push for rural, which is the top gainer right now. You have Hero MotoCorp, two-wheeler maker, rural-facing theme out there. HUL, Nestle, You can quibble that maybe, in fact, some part of their portfolio is urban as well. But clearly, these are the themes that are doing very, very well, and they're outperforming. The FMCG names, Hero MotoCorp pulled that out. And who's selling off some of these capex-oriented names? Adani Group, yes, that could be other reasons as well that it's under pressure, what the market believes. But L&T is down. L&T sees some of the, some big selling, and volumes are very, very high out there. So it appears as of now, the screen is telling you that shift from capex to consumption, at least in the near term, that seems to be playing out for the markets.
I think there is a lot of under ownership as well, right?
Yes, yes.
When we speak with so many people, and we rarely ever hear buy Nestle or buy Asian Paints or buy this. That's been completely out of favor. Gautam, in terms of actual ownership data, do you have that? Because I'm sure you look at that as well. For these, for this part, which is rural focused or the mass segment, is there heavy amount of under ownership relative to the index weights, respective index weights?
I won't say heavy amount of under ownership. For the foreigners, they have lightened up a little bit. Locals a lot more compared to historical levels. But I won't call it heavy. It's all marginal tweaks rather than heavy change in ownership.
Okay. By the way, Prashant, luckily the swing right now is not 6,700 because the high of the day was 22,131. That's 22,050. I think you read it one extra zero over there. But yeah, who's to say? It might just become, even more volatile. But right now, we're basically swinging around in about a 350-point range with the Nifty at the equilibrium level of around 22,000 for the time being. Gautam, so finally, what would your advice be as this remains volatile? And look, this policy, continuity, certainty that we're talking about, I don't think we'll get that till the budget when, an official statement is made on the floor of the House, and that'll tell us how this government, NDA 3.0, is thinking. So till we wait for that, clarity, what's the best way to navigate this market?
So I don't think we necessarily need to wait till budget, frankly. You will get signals both in terms of headline communication, if the Modi government comes in from the, or if some alternate comes in, you will hear some comments. And also, I think the market will get signals from the appointment of key ministries, right? That will also be a signal of policy expectations. Look, the budget itself, I think there's broad agreement out there, even amongst investors, and based on past history, that we won't see an abandonment of fiscal consolidation roadmap, of fiscal discipline. But tweaks is possible, but whether there will be a major tweak where there is a giving up of the capex cycle, I'll be frankly surprised if that's the case.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot, Gautam, for stopping by and filling us in with your view. Wishing you a good rest of the day, and we look forward to having a chat with you in the time to come.